And he said, if you don't figure out how to deal with this stress, you're going to be dead in 6 months. And I said, this is just wrong. And I looked at the CEO and I said, you're going to have to go through me to get to them.
All right, welcome back to the Entrusted podcast. Glad to be here tonight with our friend Jim Corman. We're going to get into some awesome discussions of his life and business and entrepreneurship and furthering that from generation to generation. And I'm joined by my esteemed hosts, Brock Murphy and Ben Presley.
That's right.
Thanks for being with us. You don't walk in gratitude often until you take something for granted and lose it. My voice was gone last episode. I had a cold or something. I couldn't speak. And so I'm very grateful to just be able to talk tonight into the mic. So Jim, thanks for being here with us.
Oh, you're very welcome. I look forward to it.
Yeah. So the way we typically start is taking the cue from John chapter 3, where Nicodemus comes to Jesus and says, how can I be born again when I'm old? And Jesus says that, you know, we're born once into temporal existence, and then we have to be born again to enter into a relationship with him. We always say we want to talk about your first birth and your second birth. And so you can just take us away and sort of give us your backstory and where you're from and how you got to kind of your career and then how the Lord saved you and all that.
All right. Good. Well, I grew up in the church, Presbyterian church.
Mm-hmm.
And
Presbyterian, yeah.
yeah. I went through a communicants class when I was maybe in about the 5th or 6th grade, and it was at that point that I accepted Christ as my Lord and Savior.
Wow.
And so. And made a public profession of faith, right, before the congregation, and that was really cool. And I would say at that point, then the sanctification process kind of kicks in.
And where was this? Where'd you grow up? What city?
It wasn't a city.
Oh, okay.
It was a town, Atmore, Alabama.
Yep. Okay.
And First Presbyterian Church on a really good Sunday would have about 50 or 60 people.
Yeah.
Packed house.
Well, yeah, that, for us, that was. I think we had 88 members, so 50 or 60 attendance was good.
I told somebody, sorry to interrupt, just this week, I'm not from Alabama, but I've been here for a long time now. Every single week, multiple times a week, I hear a new Alabama town that I'd never heard of before. Like, it's just constant, you know. I can't even think of all of them because this week I met a couple and they're both from two towns I never heard of. And I was like, that's amazing. So,
well, my dad and his father owned and operated a local telephone company in Atmore. We served the farming communities around Atmore. And actually, Atmore, the city limits, when you leave Atmore going south, you're in Florida.
Oh, okay.
The city limits and the state line are one and the same. And my father was an elder in the church. And, I mean, every Sunday when the doors were open, we were in the church and was active in youth group. And I would say that the sanctification process, you know, of growing in your faith was not steep, but it was upward. But it really, and then I went to Auburn undergraduate school and came back and joined my father. My grandfather died my senior year at Auburn. Came back and joined my father. I had been working, doing hourly paid jobs on the line crew and a service truck and data processing room and that sort of thing. But I came back and he wanted me to join him and recreate the partnership that he had with his father. And so for about a year, I just followed him around in the air conditioning, which it beat attics and and all the other, and the line crew work out on the side of the road in the summer. So, but then I went to graduate school, and that was the plan. I got my MBA from University of Texas.
Cool.
And while I was at Auburn and in high school, I just loved to date. That was just, I had 3 younger sisters. I was very comfortable being around girls. And so I actually started going to First Presbyterian in Opelika while I was at Auburn.
Wow.
And, but anyway, I would think that if I didn't have 2 or 3 dates in a week, that I was in some stage of social deprivation.
Wow. I was going to ask if we ever went steady with like multiple at the same time, and just kind of like, or was it more just, it was just social dating, you know, just.
But no, I mean, if you're going to go play tennis, would you rather play tennis with some cute girl or some stinky?
That's smart. Yeah.
Guy? I mean, if you're going to go to church, what would you rather do? And
Amen.
I could.
That's
ask
why you went to the
myself,
Oaks retreat.
If I'm going to
Lord
study for a
saved you.
test, it got to be real easy. So anyway, but the problem was that when I was growing up, if you were 18 and female in a small town in South Alabama, you did one of 2 things. You got married or you went off to college. And if you went off to college, you never came back. So when I came back to Atmore after graduating here at Auburn, I could go up 2 years or down 2 years, and there was one girl in town, and she and I got along, but it was just very casual. And so every weekend I would be going to Auburn or Tuscaloosa or Atlanta or New Orleans or somewhere. And frankly, I think one of the reasons that I picked the University of Texas for my MBA was that they had 26,000 female co-eds.
You did his research.
This is awesome.
I did. That was one of those. But about 4 or 5 weeks before I left for Austin, my sister had and her husband were at Auburn now, and I had been going on. They had an extra bedroom, and so I would go up and spend the weekends with them. And she had been asking me to go out on a blind date with this girl that she had in her classmate, and I told her that blind dates were for freshmen. That was 5 years ago. And she said, okay. But then
you said, I'm about to have 26,000 opportunities for dates.
And then it was, and so then about 6 weeks before I was to go out to Austin, I was back up at my sister's in Auburn. And she asked me again, she said, look, that girl that I wanted you have a blind date with, I think she's broken up with a guy she was going with. And I started in again, and she said, shut up. I've seen every girl that you've dated, at least here in Auburn, for the last 2 years, and none of them hold a candle to this girl.
Come on.
And so Jane and I had our first date the first week in July, and it was okay. The second week was I could tell that there was something there more than just maybe a casual type relationship. But my problem was that I was 4.5 weeks away from 26,000 in Austin.
Options.
And so crazy me, I was driving from Atmore to Auburn after work during the middle of the week. Wow. So I would leave at 5. I would get to Auburn about 8. We'd go out on a date. I'd get her in. They had curfew then. So we'd get her in at the dorm by midnight, and then I would drive back.
Wow. And go to work the next day?
Yeah, and be at work the next day. But the deal was that I needed to know. You know, I didn't want to leave the girl here in Auburn, but I didn't want to be tied to a girl that wasn't the girl when I was heading to Austin. And so we had a very sort of intense dating relationship for 4 weeks. And we were on dorm H. That's where she was living at the time. And we were sitting out on the steps, and I was about to leave Auburn and drive to Austin the next day. And I left the steps, and I got in my car, and I was crying. So a year later, we got married.
Wow.
I never dated a single one of those 26,000 in Austin. And Jane joined me. She graduated from Auburn. And as soon as she graduated, we got married. And then she joined me to finish my second year out in Austin. And then we moved back to Atmore. About the time we moved back to Atmore, we called a new pastor to the church, a fellow by the name of Lanier Ellis. And he had the absolute most profound impact on my life. One of the lessons that he gave me is that we were playing tennis, and after we finished the match, we were talking, and he looked at me and he said, "Corman, you dummy." So when your pastor starts calling you a dummy, you know that something's up.
Yeah.
And he said, "You don't get it." And I said, "What do I not get, Lanier?" And he said, "Okay, describe where you are in your faith." And I said, "All right. I believe that God exists. I believe that that he became man and came here on the earth, and that Christ lived a perfect life, and he offered himself up as a sacrifice to pay for my sins and any other person that accepts his offer, and that when I die, I'll go to heaven and I'll be joined with him." And he said, that's right. But he says, "You don't understand. You're treating your relationship with the Lord as a life insurance policy. That you'll cash it in when you die and you'll go to heaven." Yeah. But he said, "You need to understand that you have a relationship with the living God. Mm-hmm. And you have a power in you through the Holy Spirit that you are not tapping." And that he then started letting me understand that I needed to treat my relationship to the Lord more than just a glorified life insurance policy.
And this was your 23, 24?
23,
okay.
24. Yeah. And that sanctification process started skyrocketing from that point. And I had joined my father in the business, and one of the things that
was that the impetus behind the MBA, is you felt like you wanted to get a greater understanding of business so that you could go back and help run this company in Atmore?
Yeah, Blaine, I didn't particularly care for the telephone business. Mm-hmm. It was a regulated monopoly at the time. And I just saw it too constraining. Your prices were set. You had a guaranteed profit. Your territory was restricted to a franchise that the Public Service Commission gave you. That you had mandated levels of service that you had to give. It was so structured. It didn't let me exercise my entrepreneurial juices like I wanted to. Not only was my father and my grandfather entrepreneurs that owned and operated this business together, but my maternal grandfather and grandmother were entrepreneurs. And so, I wanted to be an entrepreneur, and I wanted to exercise all of those abilities. And but I love my father, He was the best teacher that I ever had. He was a Harvard MBA, but he was very patient, and I think more than anything else, and it's something that has driven me and drives me now and is part of my motivation now, is that he gave me opportunities that a 23 or 24-year-old shouldn't have had at that age. And he let me make mistakes, but he was always there for counsel. And like I said, I came back because that's where he was.
Got it.
And
that's cool.
But I always wanted to be an entrepreneur.
Yeah. And
so about 4 or 5 years into the process, this was now 1980, the telephone industry was being deregulated. It was Reagan had just been elected president, and I knew that deregulation had been discussed. And actually, when I was out in Texas, I could take a goodly number of electives because I had an undergraduate degree in finance. And so I went over to the law school and took some regulatory law courses and started following deregulation even before it was legalized or it was enacted. And so in 1980, the telephone industry and the banking industry, the airline industry, the natural gas industry, they were to some degree regulated monopolies, and they were opened up to competition. And so I had been putting together a business plan with the understanding that at some point deregulation in the telecommunications industry was going to happen.
Wow.
And as soon as the Congress passed the Telecommunications Act of 1980, I went in to my father and presented a business plan that I'd been working on for 3 or 4 years, and it was to be in long distance. In other words, at that time, no cell phones were around, and so there was one regulated monopoly that controlled all long-distance calls. If you wanted to call from Auburn, Alabama to New York City, the local telephone company in Auburn would connect up to AT&T long lines, and AT&T would complete the call to New York and then connect to a local telephone company in New York.
Wow.
And
that's so foreign to my Gen Z brain.
Yeah, right.
And so once deregulation occurred, we knew people could come into our territory if you wanted to come into Atmore or Camden or Walnut Hill, Florida, or wherever, Molino. They could, and so it was a threat, but it was also a real opportunity because we could go outside of our territory and start to provide certain services. And I had chosen long distance as the service that I wanted to get into. Now, we couldn't build a network that would complete calls from every city in the United States to every other city. So initially what we did, we had to lease circuits at the wholesale level from AT&T. So I was basically a wholesaler of their network. We started marketing our long-distance service to customers, and we were using AT&T's leased lines to complete those calls. When I went to my father, I told him that I wanted to do it, and I asked for his blessing. And he asked to see the business plan, and 4 hours of going through it. I said, Papa, if you and the girls, meaning my 3 sisters and their husbands, I said, if you and the girls want to invest and be a part of it, you can purchase whatever percent ownership you have in the family business and in this business. But I said, I don't want you to do it if you don't think it's a good idea. And he said, Jim, I do. I think it's a good idea, and I want to invest, but I have one condition. And I said, what's that? And he said, you have to run it. He said, I'll invest and I'll serve on your board, but it's going to be your company and you run it. And so we started the long-distance telephone company. We got to be the first licensed telephone company in Florida and the first licensed company in Alabama to compete with AT&T.
Wow.
And we then went to Mobile and Pensacola, Fort Walton, Panama City, Tallahassee, Biloxi, New Orleans, and then Montgomery, Jackson, and it really grew, and but I started out working 40 hours a week, and then 50 hours a week, and then 60 hours a week, and then actually there were some weeks that I was working 80 hours a week, because part of the problem was that when we leased lines from AT&T, we paid a fixed price for these circuits. So if I had one customer or 10,000 customers, I had this fixed expense. And so you have every motivation to drive revenue up as quickly as possible and to get to that break even. But now the nice thing about it is once you get above that break even, it's there. And
Technical question.
Yeah.
Because I'm not, as a millennial, I'm not fully following the order of operations here. So if you're becoming a competitor to AT&T in the long distance call space, the obvious incentive of leasing their circuits is they're making revenue off of that. But are they sniffing that you're like, why would they lease to you if they're like, was he trying to like take over the long distance? Does that make sense?
Yeah. The Congress, when they passed the act, they established the prices for the wholesale circuits, and they priced enough margin between wholesale and a discounted retail price to where they knew that people could come in and if they were efficient, could make money. And so the Federal Communications Commission, the FCC, actually set those rates that AT&T had to lease to us.
And they would make money rather than just losing their customers. They would make money off the lease.
That's right. And so we would market, we would bill, we would collect. They would complete the calls.
So if I called like today, if I called from Montgomery to Biloxi, I'm just going to pay the $60 that I pay every month to AT&T. But back then, I would have paid you
per minute.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Wow. And you just send me an invoice in the mail at the end of the month?
Yeah. And collect. And so part of the issue got to be that this thing got to be way bigger than we had ever imagined. The pressures kept getting greater and greater and greater as the losses were building up, because we had to fund those losses. And until we got to a break-even point, it was tough. And working 60 and 70 and sometimes 80 hours a week and being on call, I mean, I had to learn how to do everything and then train people it finally got to the point to where I was so worried, because now my sisters and their husbands and my father, they had essentially invested their life savings, and so it just wasn't me.
That's a lot of stress.
And and Blaine, one night, have y'all ever gotten so nervous or stressful that you threw up?
I don't think so. You have? Mm-hmm.
I haven't, but I've heard those stories.
I started doing that, and so I was so worn down that every time something was happening at work, and it was so critical at that point, trying to reach that break even point, but where we had the greatest cumulative losses. I was lying in bed one night and just couldn't go to sleep, and got up and went to the bathroom, and when I got up off the toilet, it was just blood red.
Wow.
And I went to my family doctor, who had been my doctor since I was about 2. And he ran all sorts of tests, and he came back and he said, Jim, you don't have cancer. There's not an intestinal or stomach problem. This is just strictly stress. And he said, I know both of your grandfathers and the cardiac problems that they had. And I know my father had to have open heart surgery. And he said, if you don't figure out how to deal with this stress, you're going to be dead in 6 months.
Wow. And this is your 29?
I was 29 years old.
Wow.
When this was going on. And
can I pause you? Like, what is going through your head when you're 29 years old and your doctor says that?
Well, and it's not like you can get out of it. Yeah. I mean, it wasn't like I could walk away from this situation.
Right.
Yeah.
I had to try to figure out a way to deal with the stress. And I went to Lanier, the pastor, and I said, Lanier, what do I do? And he said, Jim, you need to pray. And I said, at work? And he said, yeah, at work. And
I need to do something.
yeah, I mean,
I need to work harder.
yeah, that's right. And but here again, this is when I began to understand that I did have a relationship with the living God that was in me, and that this was not a relationship that we would just establish or reestablish every Sunday morning at 11 o'clock. That this was something that could go on every hour of every day. And I just started praying, Lord, help. I need help. I can't do any. I've done all I can do. I can't do anymore. And please help me. And I said, I know I'm not in control, but I know you are. And you know that I love you. I want to serve you. And Jim's going to step aside, and Lord, you take over. And the business began to turn around, and it got past that break-even point, and it was a fixed cost, heavy model. So every time we had revenue going up above that break-even point, a good bit of it was flowing through to the bottom line. And so in 1987, this was 7 years after we started the business, I walked into Jane, and we had been living modestly. We still, at that point, 7 years into our marriage, we hadn't bought a new car. We were living in an average, an average home in Atmore. But I went in and I said, "Honey, we've sold the business," and I said, "We can pay off the mortgage." And I love the water. I love the beach. I'm a beach cat, if there's ever been one. And I said, that little unit on Choctawhatchee Bay that we've been renting, let's buy it and pay all cash for it.
Wow.
And the kids' education, we had 3 children. 2 and the third on the way. Third was born in 88. I said, let's set up a trust fund for each of the kids' college education. And then let's set aside some money for our retirement. And then let's pay the taxes. And then let's figure out what to do with the other 2/3 of the money.
The other 2/3.
All right. So
real quick,
Yeah.
just so the listeners know, how, without, you don't have to say a number or any type of numbers, but how big was this business when you sold it? Like employee size, or just, how?
Because don't forget, this is Atmore, Alabama,
yeah, I know.
which is awesome.
But if it's everywhere, it's probably
well, for sure. But
Saying it in a
it's,
positive way, like the fact that this started in
this is,
Yeah.
the Corman family, multiple generations out of Atmore, Alabama.
Right. It was at the time it got to about 500 employees, and in those days and those dollars, probably 40 or 50 million in revenue.
And then you sold to a larger telecommunications company, regional or national or something.
And we did 2 things, and I'll talk about that in a second. What we decided to do was that we created a charitable trust. We understood that we were stewards. We don't own anything. The Lord has just entrusted each one of us with a certain amount of His resources.
100%.
And that what we're supposed to do is to manage them. We are a steward and we are a minister. Every one of us.
I love it when the word entrusted gets accidentally just subconsciously dropped in conversation.
Well, it's still accidental.
New hats. Everybody,
that's cool.
Everybody comment that you want Ben to mass produce this hat. Turn toward the camera, make sure they can see it. Sorry.
And so we created a charitable trust, and but we saved enough to do the things that we talked about. So from a financial standpoint, all of a sudden Jane and I had more than we had ever dreamed, and so that allowed for us to start giving, at levels well over a tithe.
Yeah. How old were you when you sold the business?
At that point, I was 87, so I was now 34.
I mean,
all right.
And you're 34.
I am past that point. You guys got plenty of time left.
And so what actually happened was that there were 3 companies that were similar to mine, and we became the initial target of a hostile takeover. And rather than being
Shout out Sagahaji.
yeah.
It's a long story. Sorry, I just had to get that in there.
Good. Rather than that happen, we went to two other companies similar to ours, and we decided to merge and take it public. And so it became listed on the New York Stock Exchange.
wow.
And rather than, we were all 3 individual CEOs, and we had developed sort of a CEO mentality, and so we decided to hire somebody to run it that had experience running a publicly traded company, and the 3 of us, along with 3 other people, served as his lieutenants.
Gotcha.
And so it became one of the larger companies, even in 1987, a $1 billion revenue company.
Wow.
And but about a year into it, I got fired.
I feel like that's the story for every time someone sells a company.
Yeah.
Did you still
Getting fired.
Did you still have some ownership when they fired you?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. What happened, the company was headquartered in Atlanta. And so the CEO had asked me to move to Atlanta. And I told him that Jane and I had decided to stay in Atmore and raise our children there.
Yeah.
And so we would have an all-day or maybe a 2-day staff meeting every 2 weeks in Atlanta. And so there were 3 or 4 of us who were outside of Atlanta in the Carolinas, and me in South Alabama, and they're around that would come into Atlanta where the headquarters were, and we would have the 6 or 7 of us and the CEO around the conference table, but each one of us would bring in 1 or 2 of our lieutenants, and they would be on the outside of the conference room. So all total, there was probably 20 or 22 people in the room. And in one staff meeting, the CFO stood up and announced that there was going to be a layoff and that there were 53 people in Atmore that were going to be laid off. And I was still that was still part of my operational responsibilities. And I said, wait a minute. I said, why am I finding out about this right now? And they said, well, Jim, we didn't need to ask you. We knew what your answer was going to be. Mm. And I said, this is wrong. I said, I know the level of efficiency that those people have, and I know the pay scales that they have, and that's the most cost-effective. It was customer service function. So that's the most cost-effective customer service reps that we have, and that all you're doing is just reducing expenses to meet some increased earnings report that's going to be coming out next quarter. And I said, look what you're doing to their lives, and you understand the level of service that that's doing to our customers. Mm. And I said, this is just wrong. And I looked at the CEO and I said, you're going to have to go through me to get to them. You don't tell a CEO of a New York Stock Exchange company that.
He's got to go through you.
He got up and he asked me to step outside the room. And as soon as we got outside the conference room door, he got in my face and he was yelling. I mean, he wanted everybody in that room to understand and hear every word that was being said. Mm. And he wanted them to make sure that they never wanted to just do what I just did. But the problem was that he hadn't, at that point, he hadn't figured out how to do without me. And so I just got right back in his face and I told him, I said, it's wrong. It is just wrong. It's not fair to the employees. It's not fair to. And I said, this is a short-sighted decision that is even long-term is a poor decision for the company because the level of service is going to be going down. And anyway, he then came back in and announced that particular motion had been tabled. Mm. And so when I came back 2 weeks later, instead of the CFO standing up, the CEO stood up. And he made eye contact with me, and he never looked at anybody else. And he said, "We've changed the decision. We're not laying off 53 people in Atmore. We're laying off 55 people in Atmore." And so I stood up and I said, Gene, I understand. You'll have my letter of resignation this afternoon, but I want it to be effective tomorrow. Let me go back. These employees need to hear it from me. And so I went back to the motel room and told Jane, called her and told her. And then the next morning I went back and told those wonderful people they didn't have a job anymore, that there wasn't anything that I could do about it, that I'd tried.
Yeah.
I hadn't been successful in doing it. So I had to decide at that point what I wanted to do with my life, at least professionally and ministerially. And so...
Because this is a year after the sale of everything else. So, I mean, you're in a great spot. And so that's challenging because it doesn't matter to you in your life, but you care about these people.
And so I went and started looking and just praying, saying, Lord, show me what you want me to do. And I had an offer to manage a continental effort. It was actually Africa, the missions effort of a large parachurch organization that had a presence throughout Africa. I had an offer to teach finance at the University of West Florida in Pensacola, and I had an idea for another company. And so Jane and I spent time praying about it and had some of the ministry folks come and visit, and went down to Pensacola and met with the dean at University of West Florida. And I started working with my father and four ladies on a new business plan. Now the business plan required that we wanted to go back into the telephone industry, and I had a non-compete, and it was going to require that I go back to that same CEO and ask him to release me from my non-compete agreement.
How long was the non-compete?
3 years.
Okay.
So I had 2 years left to it.
Okay.
And but we spent about 4 months working on the business plan, and praying about it. And at the end of the 4 or 5 months, my father was offering to invest and was counseling, but there were 4 ladies, all of whom had lost their jobs, that were going to be the department heads. And I said, look, we put it together. We've critiqued it. You now understand it as much as I do. If at least 3 of the 4 of you will join me, then Jane and I have decided that this is what we want to do. And I went around the room, and the first one said yes, and the second one said yes, and the third one said, well, Jim, I can't. I know that I've now met the guy that I'm going to marry, and I'm not going to be in a position to accept. But the 4th lady accepted. And so we launched that company. Now, the thing is, though, is that Jane and I, when we decided that, we understood this. My profession was my ministry. I had opportunities to go into ministry or to go into teaching, but I wanted to stay in the business world. I wanted for business to be done the way I wanted it to be done. I wanted to be able to make the rules. I wanted to be able to create the culture. And Jane and I entered into a covenant with the Lord. And we said, Lord, whatever value is created in this company that we own, it's yours. All of it.
Wow.
We were going to have to raise some money from some outside investors, but ultimately Jane and I were going to own about 2/3 of the company. And we said, it's yours, Lord. You want to bless it, bless it. We think this is what you want us to do. And I had, in our business plan, I had put together a 5-year business plan. And I thought that at the end of 5 years that there would be, in today's dollars, about $2 million worth of value that could be realized. And I just said, Jane, how many people in the world are in a position to bring $2 million to the kingdom? And I said, this is what I think the Lord wants us to do. And it called for 55 employees. There and that more, and guess where they were going to come from? It was a similar type of business, staying in the long-distance business, but we were leasing circuits now, not from AT&T, but from the company that I'd helped start got fired from.
Wow. Full circle.
Full circle. And so...
Could I ask you a question?
Yeah.
I would just love to hear, the prosperity gospel is so rampant in today's day and age that I feel like when people hear, when you go back and you talked about, you got to the point where you just prayed and then the business took off, and then you talk about some of the things you're sharing right now, people are almost scared to hear that and know that there is some truth to that is okay because of the prosperity gospel. Could you just elaborate on that from you and your perspective, and how the Lord does bless those he loves, and it's not the prosperity gospel?
Right. I mean, just because you pray that prayer and just because you turn it over to the Lord doesn't guarantee prosperity. That's where the prosperity really it and he might, but we didn't know. This was risky. It was what we felt like the Lord was going to do, and it wasn't just the financial side, but we could create jobs for people. We could create an environment that would nurture them, that they would enjoy coming to work. We could create a service that would be a real benefit to our customers. So again, I'm just going to be candid. All right, I'm not just. This is so. Jane once described to me at a grand opening. She said 2 things about Jim. Number one, he'd much rather be a general of a small army than a lieutenant in a big one. Amen to that. And then she said, secondly, he will dream the dream. And so my dream was to have 55 employees, and at the end of 5 years to be able to turn $2 million over into the kingdom. Six years later, in today's dollars, what we did, we created a foundation and put our 2/3 ownership of the company into the foundation. 6 years later, the company was still there. There was $125 million in that foundation, and there were 2,100 employees.
That's crazy.
Now I'm talking today's dollars, okay?
Right.
Just to let everybody kind of understand.
Wow.
Well, no, I don't know what the word is for it, but it's. I will tell you, just to make sure y'all understand, you're not in the presence of a saint. When it became obvious that this business was going to be a lot more than this dreamer could ever dream.
Mm-hmm.
I do love the beach. And I had dreamed as a senior in Auburn. In fact, on my wall, the only thing I had on my wall my senior year here at Auburn was a poster. And it was horizontal, about 18 inches deep and maybe about 4 or 5 feet long. And I had it right over my bed. So every time I walked into the bedroom, I could look up there and I could see her. And she was just laying there in this beautiful emerald green Caribbean water with this white beach right in front of her. It was a 55-foot aft cabin Hatteras.
I was wondering where we were going. Was she like that?
And so I went to Jane and I said, honey, this is way beyond anything we ever thought. Could I maybe have just a little bit? All right? Because we had committed 100% on everything.
Yeah.
And so Jane pulled out the Bible and started reading about this two characters, Ananias and Sapphira.
Mm.
I decided that I didn't need to back off that covenant. We would stay with it.
We just this morning read in Joshua 7 when they're going through Canaan, and after they go through Jericho, then they go to I think it's Ai actually, and they go and they're supposed to give everything they find to the Lord, and then the one guy takes it and puts it in his tent, and then the people suffer. We just read that this morning, so that's funny. She pulled another one.
Yeah, and his outcome wasn't very good either.
Right. Stoned and burned.
Yeah, that was so.
That's an important part of the story. That's really good to hear. To be honest with, I've made this commitment with the Lord, this covenant, and I can trust Him with it. And then the temptation.
Sure.
Is there's you don't have to fall into sin in falling into the temptation, but the temptation to be like, man, I thought this was going to be 2 million. We have outpaced this by thousands of %, and I need. Maybe I go buy a boat. It's not that much.
Yeah. So now, you have this couple from Atmore. We're now let's see, we'd be about 43, 42. What do we do with it? Because we're stewards. I mean, go to the parable of the talents and understand. Number one, we and I did this. All right, I understood that I didn't own it. That this was the Lord's. But stewardship is more than denying ownership. It's also understanding that you're being held accountable to manage it well. Mm. So, Brock, I'm going, what do we do? And so
it's a lot of money I got to be generous with.
So Ben, you'll appreciate this. We had the foundation. We just put the money into the foundation. I never want to have just one money manager. I want to have several. And the idea is that you better do better than me. I'm an old finance boy. And I would pit them against one another. Yep. And then I would fire the underproducing one. They'd all have the same requirements. and then I would select another. I'd give more to the two performers, but then I would start with a small amount with somebody else. But anyway, we more than just trying to manage it well from that perspective, we needed to release it out of the foundation, and so we created some guidelines. We decided to concentrate exclusively on three topics or three efforts. Mass evangelism, discipleship, and church planting. And we decided that 2/3 of our grants would be international and 1/3 of our grants would be domestic. But I was still running this business. Now we had 3 kids and we got a Little League, and in Atmore, there's all sorts of responsibilities that you have. And so, we had to hire staff. We had to get an executive director, sweet guy, that wonderful Christian guy, a very effective business person that just retired or quit his position with a carpet manufacturer and came to there because, and when we made a decision that we didn't want the foundation to be permanent or long-term. It was just a place to hold it until we could figure out how to effectively put it to work. And we said, Lord, we can't squander this. And so we started making grants. Typically we would make smaller grants, but we would have people come in and say, okay, what are you going to do with it? We're going to hold you accountable. You've got to give us reports. We would go and see whatever the effort was, and we would have reviews, and if and tried to manage the Lord's resources well, and that was amazing. Yeah. I have the spiritual gift of giving. But understand, the spiritual gift, you don't get that until you become a Christian. All right? And there were, but the sheer joy that to issue those grants and to see how the Lord was at work and to get to be a part of it was unbelievable. So we created that foundation in 92, and it accumulated funds until about 96 or 97. And but once we got comfortable, we were able to increase the size of the grants, and once you're issuing, and we were today's dollars issuing $10 to $15 million worth of grants a year. We would get between 300 and 400 grant applications annually, and we would make about 96 to 100 grants. And we were just blessed.
Did you ever, sorry to interrupt, did you ever make larger grants, like 8-figure grants that were endowments for ministries? Because you had a temporary mindset of, we're going to steward this and maximize the usefulness, but we want it to be temporary. So did you ever give to other things that you felt like could be more perpetual and like keep going, and like, does that make sense?
Yeah.
Or did you just more kind of hone in on ministries that you felt were profitable kingdom wise and just kind of just poured into that?
Exactly.
Okay.
The latter.
Yeah. Okay.
And so from 1992 until about 2000, 2006, 2007, we ultimately were able to start distributing Principle, and it kept going down, and it got to. We still were making some small grants from 2007 to 2013, but for the most part, I think the substantial grants probably ended around 2007, 2008. But what a wonderful,
man, it's so cool.
16 or 20 year experience that was. So we ultimately sold that company to a publicly traded NASDAQ company this time. And a year and a half after we did that, the CEO fired me.
General and a small one, and I looked down.
That's right.
Yeah, I did, buddy.
This time, I just disagreed with the direction that he was taking the company, and I would say so, and he didn't like a differing viewpoint, and he got drunk one night, and he crafted an email and fired me. But he woke up the next morning and called the administrative assistant that had been my administrative assistant for over 20 years and asked Ann to go into my, because she had access to my email that she could. He asked her to go in and delete it, and she wouldn't do it. So when I came in and I read the email, I called him and we talked about it, and I told him, I said, look, I don't believe in the direction that you're taking the company. You're not going to change your opinion. So my involvement long term is in the company is not going to be that much. And I said, I could still make a contribution and I would carry on, but you need to suffer the consequences of taking actions like this. Mm. And so I got fired again. And by this point, that same administrative assistant, she'd been with me since the early 80s, so we'd been together for 23 years. She went back and she had arranged all my travel. I had spent between 2,100 and 2,200 nights on the road for business travel during that 20-year period.
Wow.
And I had over 5 million domestic airline miles that were actual flown miles. Because by the time we got the company got to 2,100 employees, we had employees in Saskatoon, Saskatchewan, in Minot and Mandan and Grand Forks, North Dakota, and Sioux Falls, South Dakota, and Pensacola, Florida, and it was crazy.
And Atmore.
In Atmore. In Atmore. We had 536 in Atmore. That's crazy. That was wonderful. But anyway, this is sort of the last sort of chapter. don't know if it's the last chapter, but the next chapter. Jane and I think I'm going to retire. I told her, I said, I've been ridden hard and put up wet. This last company, when you think it was going to be in Atmore, 50 people, relatively small, and you end up with 2.1 million customers buying from you every month and over 2,000 employees scattered from Saskatchewan to Pensacola, Florida. I said, I think we ought to retire. We had bought a lot and built a home on Choctawhatchee Bay and designed a home that was going to be our primary retirement destination. And so at 53, we're empty nested. My youngest daughter is off in college by that point. And so we moved down to the beach. But the problem was that Jane gets seasick when she wades into the Gulf. She burns when she gets into the sun. She hates sticky sand, all right?
It's me, Miss Jane. I'm feel you.
And
I'm a lake guy. I'm not a beach guy.
I mean, what you catch when you go to a lake, that's bait. I mean, these freshwater fishermen that, it's as big as my hand. I'm going, that's just a good bait fish, what that is. But anyway, we designed and built sort of our dream home, and this is sort of a retirement we'd planned for, and we go down there, and we'd been going down there as a second home. It was only a 2-hour drive from Atmore. And, but after about a year, I walked in to Jane and said, honey, it's not working. And she said, you're right. And I said, I don't know what the Lord wants to do, but it's not to listen to a bunch of spoiled Yankees play golf all day and complain about country club rules.
Amen.
All right. I said, I don't know what I want to do, but let's pray about it.
This is the antithesis to the John Piper anecdote. Have you heard his Don't Waste Your Life, a book he wrote? And he basically just tells the hypothetical story, but sadly very true story of retirees in Florida who play golf every day and collect seashells, and then they're going to stand before their creator one day and be like, well, I spent the last 20 years of my life, like, here's a bottle of seashells, like, here you go. And so it's refreshing and convicting and encouraging to hear the opposite.
A fellow by the name of Buford wrote a book called Halftime. And it's talking about, and the central theme of that book is for men and women who are at this point in their lives to say, move from success to significance. Mm-hmm. And so by this point, my son Clay was at Auburn, and he had been befriended by Wayne Alderman, who at that time was the dean of the College of Business. And
this man loves Wayne Alderman more than anyone but his wife and the Lord.
Okay.
I gotta interrupt. I've got to do this. At Brock's rehearsal dinner, everyone gets up and gives speeches. Great night. We're so excited for them to get married tomorrow. And, the groom gets up to say, thank you all for coming, all that, all this stuff. So Brock thanks his mom. I love you so much, Mom. Dad, you're the man. brothers,
Forgot
sisters,
to
y'all are
say
great.
Anything about MJ, which is
Didn't say anything about his soon-to-be wife the next day. Says, my friends are pretty awesome. And then he looks around the room and he starts to pause. Dr. A, I wouldn't be here without you. Like, no tears
That was
for the
really
wife.
good, by the way.
That was good. Dude.
That was really good.
No tears for the wife, no tears for the parents, nothing but Dr. A.
Yeah.
It was awesome. It was so had to share that. It's great.
Well, we've got a lot in common, Brock, because I have absolutely immense respect for Wayne. Now, I don't know that I've ever cried over him in public, but
He's on my message. Saying my message.
That's awesome.
I love it.
but anyway, what happened was that Wayne would continue to teach one or two accounting classes while he was the dean, and he would have a Bible study for some of the male students in his classes, and Clay was one of those, and so Clay and Wayne were very close. I'm sure a relationship similar to what you experienced, Brock. And so Clay started going to church wherever Wayne was going, and
Similar story.
and so when Jane and I would come up on weekends for game day type activities, when your college son is going to church, you're going to go to church with your son.
Yeah.
And I met Wayne actually here at church in Auburn when we were going with Clay. But then Wayne and I struck up a friendship, and so after Clay had graduated and was working for a boutique investment banking firm in Atlanta, we still kind of kept the house that we had purchased that he had lived in here, and we were using it for game day destination. And we were up one weekend, and we just kind of kept going to the same church, and I saw Wayne there. And Alderman looked at me and he said, "Well, Corman, how's retirement coming?" And I said, "Alderman, if I ever write a book on retirement, don't read it. I have made an absolute disaster." And he said, "What do you mean?" And I said, "Wayne, this is not what the Lord wants me to do. I don't know what it is, but there's still another chapter here." And he said, "Well, what do you think?" He said, "Do you want to go and start another business?" And I said, "I don't know. That last one was hard." And he said, "Well, what else do you like to do?" And I said, "Well, I've always enjoyed teaching in a church environment. And I enjoyed training in a corporate environment. When you start out with you and 3 ladies in a rented house, and 6 years later is 2,100, you better know how to train."
Yeah.
And I said, "So I might like to teach." And he said, "Well, do you want an interview?" And I said, "At Auburn?" And he said, "Yes." And I said, "Wayne, those academians wouldn't give me the time of day. I don't have a PhD. I just have a master's." And he said, "Corman, how many companies have you started? And how many, and he said, don't you think that counts for something?" And I said, "Well, not in academia." And he said, backwards. "Well, he at this point, he was now the dean of admissions." Mm-hmm. But he said, "Well, I think it does, and actually the accreditation entities are now recognizing that, and they are allowing Auburn and other schools to hire permanent faculty that don't have a terminal degree and not count it against them." Now, there are limits to how many you can hire, but he said, "Would you like an interview?" Because I was talking to the current dean, and the entrepreneurship program at Auburn is growing. And he told me the other day at lunch that he wanted a practitioner rather than an academician to come in and teach the practical application courses at the very end of the curriculum. And I said, well, Wayne, I am definitely a practitioner and I'm definitely not an academician. And so I came up for the interview, and I had never interviewed. I mean, my father hired me, and then it was
your company's.
Yeah, I know. And,
wow.
And so I just...
What age are you at that point?
53.
Did you put a resume together?
Yeah, I did. And I came up for the interview, Brock, and it was the head of the management department. That's where the entrepreneurship program resided, and the dean in the College of Business. Those were the two people that were interviewing me. And after we went to lunch, and after lunch, I thought, and I'd been doing interviews my entire career, and with all sorts of humility, I'll say, I thought I knocked it out of the park. But at the end of the lunch, they didn't say anything. And so, I'm an old finance boy, but I've had to learn how to sell. And I know you never get the sale unless you ask for it. And so I looked at them and I said, so do I get the job? And they looked at each other and they said, well, we haven't seen you teach. And I went, wow, yes. And so they said, do you think you could teach would you be willing to teach an entrepreneurship class? And I said, oh, I'd love to. I said, when? And they said, what about this afternoon? And I went, oh, yeah. And so I raised it to a little bit of a level because I could see them kind of challenging me a little bit. And I said, so let's do this. It needs to be an entrepreneurship class. And I said, I will lecture. How long is it? It was an hour and 15-minute class. I said, I will lecture an hour and 15 minutes, and it'll be whatever the topic is that professor was going to be teaching on. And I said, you give me 3 to 5 minutes notice before class.
3 to 5 minutes?
Yeah. All right?
That's so good.
I mean, look, if I don't know entrepreneurship by now,
that's true.
I mean, I'm going. And so anyway, they did. They hauled me off to Louder, and I walked into an entrepreneurship class, and the professor told me the subject.
Do you happen to remember what it was?
Yeah, the importance of vision.
Softball.
Yeah.
Yeah, seriously.
So for an hour and 15 minutes. So
well, that's true.
yeah. So
we
anyway,
just tell this story. Yeah. Let me tell you about vision.
So
back in Atmore, Alabama.
That's right. So I gave the lecture, and at the end of the lecture, they clapped. And like
the college students?
Yeah, the college students, the class.
I can guarantee you, I don't think I ever clapped in college.
Okay.
Yeah, I didn't.
Well,
that's a good thing.
Yeah, right. I walked out into the department head, and I said, Sharon, I said, that's really nice. I know y'all have guest speakers come in from time to time, and that's really nice for them to do that. She said, Jim, they don't do that.
Yeah.
And I said, they don't do that? And she said, no. And I said, do I get the job? And she said, oh, yeah.
Yeah, you get it.
And so
what do you want to make?
that was the beginning of 17 and a half years.
Wow.
Of being able to teach. Part-time, I would teach 2 or 3 classes a semester. And then Clay and I started the venture capital firm here, and so I would spend the better part of 2 days a week involved over in the university and teaching, and then 3 days a week with Clay and the venture capital side, though Clay would impede since he said, "Dad, you don't have anybody at home. You need something to do." So that has been that's been wonderful.
That was my first introduction to Jim. Was one of my best friends in college took an entrepreneurship class while we were in school in 2010 or 2011. So that's the first time I heard some of Jim's story, and Rawson would just rave about this class. And I was going to do entrepreneurship as my major. Entrepreneurship and family business was the title of the major, but the class schedule didn't work with our golf schedule because at the time it was a smaller major. I know it is funny, but with our like team schedule laid out for a week, there was only so many class options because it was a smaller major. And so I was very limited in like being able to be there at the right time. So that's what I was going to major in until I went finance. So,
well, it was extremely rewarding, but I will say, and I think this is kind of I think maybe the I don't know, last message or theme that I'd like to communicate. Y'all can take it wherever else you want to take it, but. When I started teaching, they wouldn't even give me, any part-time student to help me, and I had to learn how to type. Right? I mean, I would dictate, and but now I'm having to do everything on my own. I was used to managing an organization of 2,100 people, and I look around now and there's it's you, me, and that's it. You're making, not daily but probably weekly $1 million decisions, and so I had fallen into sort of a trap that I was measuring my importance by how other people might measure it. How many people, employees do you have? How many customers? How many dollars of revenue? How many dollars of profits? How many? And as well, at this time, the foundation had all of the principle had been exhausted, and here we had been making, in today's dollars, $10-15 million worth of grants a year, and traveling worldwide and overseas. It was. And, I'm not doing that anymore. And I really was dealing at least temporarily with a sense of loss of significance. Because I was looking at it from human eyes, right? But I walked into those classrooms, and I can say this now. I was concerned about it at the time, but I shared the gospel with every class, the first class.
Amen.
And they knew where I stood, and they knew why it was important to me. But anyway, I would tell them, and I said, I need to be held accountable, and I am a goal-oriented person. And I said, here's my goal for this class. This is going to be the best class you've ever had at Auburn. Not one of them, the best class you've ever had at Auburn. And I said, I know there are a number of wonderful professors out there, but, and I said, now I know I can't hit that with every one of you, because some of you won't relate to my style of teaching. Some of you just took this class because it was a convenient time. Some of you are not engaged into the material. But I said, for as many as you possibly can, I want this to be the best class you ever had. Now, they kept expanding the number of classes that I was teaching, and the number of students in the classes kept increasing. And so I learned, Blaine, the most important thing that you can do today, right, is what the Lord wants you to do. Mm. Now, if that's cleaning toilets, changing diapers, whatever, don't get caught up in trying to draw significance out of how the world measures significance. Because the most significant thing you can be doing is what the Lord wants you to be doing. Mm. And the Lord confirmed that I didn't need to be starting and running my own companies. I needed to be teaching those students. Mm. Now, I did get involved with Clay, and we have, in addition to the venture capital side, have started and built some other companies. I still let those entrepreneurial juices go.
You still got to scratch it.
But I'm now retired from teaching, and so I'm back full time with Clay. But I'm now asking the Lord for yet again. All right, Lord, what do you want to do? What do you have planned? What's the ministry that I need to be conducting to further your kingdom?
Man, let me say quickly yeah, seriously. Just, I ran into Clay at the T-ball field 3 hours ago. I haven't seen Clay in months, and I was going to blow my nose, and I came around the AC unit by the ball, and I was like, oh, hey, I'm interviewing your dad tonight. And I was like, long story, podcast, we're excited. And he in 90 seconds wanted to relay to me, he's like, have you heard the story of the business that he started and basically just gave away the value? And I said, I've heard it. We've talked on the phone, and he's shared it with me, and it's amazing. And he's like, I don't think it can be overstated that my dad created generational wealth that could have basically set me and my sisters and family up to be trust fund babies. And he kind of laughed, and he's like, he gave it all away. And he said, I am so grateful that the legacy that he has left me is eternal and not monetary. And I just thought that was profound. Obviously a great testament to you committing your work to the Lord and knowing that it's him that brings the produce from that. And just that if we are faithful where our feet are and we do what the Lord is, I so need to hear that. Your significance is just doing what the Lord calls you to do. That's where significance is found. So anyways, keep going.
Yeah, to follow up a little bit on that story with Clay, I mean, we've told our children, we have Clay and two daughters, and we've told they're all have married wonderful, wonderful people. Clay married way over his head. But anyway,
Same.
we told we told them that that they were partners, because in a lot of cases, what would have happened is that this wealth would have been transferred to them, and that didn't happen. And so Jane and I were concerned about the reaction that they would have, and so when we created the foundation, part of what we wanted to do was to get them involved, so that when people would come in and give us reports from the ministry, we would invite them to come in. And once they got to an age of 16 or 17, we would actually let them make a grant. We would let them, on their own, perform the due diligence, make the grant, do the follow-up, and give us a report back.
It's awesome.
And one of Clay's was that I think the movie Passion of the Christ came out. He called me up and he said, "Dad, I'm on I've talked with Bill Bolt, who was Onward director now, and was with Campus Crusade for Christ then." He said, I want to buy out the theater and just make it available free. And and Bill has agreed that some of the Campus Crusade people will be there and can kind of follow up and interact with the crowd. And the first night, they did the publicity, and the first night there was a line at the theater here in Auburn that was 200 yards long. It was winding through it.
Wow.
And waiting for the doors to open, and because it was totally free for anybody that wanted to come. And Clay called me weeping, and he said, "Dad, now I know why you did it."
That's awesome.
Wow.
That's cool.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Now I know why you did it.
Yeah.
So I would just love to hear, if you were to speak to someone young. I mean, just to me and Brock, we're 26, 27, and there is obviously a place for a healthy and a righteous ambition in life, and the Lord does have a path for all of us, and we're not just supposed to sit and just let things happen one day at a time. We are to be where our feet are, and we are to steward that well, but we also, it's okay to have the visions and the ambitions and the goals. And so how would you tell that person to wisely balance doing what the Lord has them doing in that moment, in that day, but also being open-handed to what he may have for them walking forward?
Yeah. Jane is the prayer in our family. She, and so the Lord tends to speak to her. Me, I kind of go off on my own independent, stubborn ways, and just I'll pray when I need help or when I think about it, but it's part of her just makeup. And so when I'm looking for guidance, I go to Jane. Now, sometimes as well, when you're trying to make these decisions about what you the Lord would have you be doing. My recommendation, if you're like me, is that do it. Just go out and do something. Pray about it and then do it. Because if you are outside of the Lord's will, you're going to know it.
Yeah.
All right? I mean, it may be subtle at first, but if he has to, he will get a baseball bat upside your head.
Yep.
All right? So that for me, a lot of times the way that I find how the Lord wants me to go is that I'll start moving in a direction. I mean, I'll go here, and if that's wrong, he'll back, and I'll go this way, and he speaks to me through corrections. He speaks to Jane through prayer directly a lot of times. So I don't think there's just one answer. Jane would approach it one way. I approach it another. Jane's is a lot less painful than mine.
Amen. That brings me to another question that I was thinking about earlier. Was just, I mean, throughout all the Lord has done in your life, we had 2 or 3 moments of really cool influence of her in your story, but like just in the middle of some of those stressful years, raising kids in the middle of companies. I mean, I think y'all are celebrating 50 years this year, I think. I mean, what is that like, that relationship and her role in your story, in your life?
Yeah. June 26th will be 50 years. Mm. So, I think that, you know, in any marriage, a healthy marriage, 2 become 1. But let's understand they're 2. You kind of become 1, and that 1 is it's not what you started out, and it's not what your wife started out. The 2 become this new. So, for instance, Jane is risk averse. Can you imagine?
She picked the wrong guy.
Yeah. Goodness gracious.
Now, you know, I don't love risk for risk's sake. I'm tolerant of risk if the reward is great enough. Mm-hmm. Yeah. You know, I'll analyze the return, and if the potential return and the likelihood of that return is significant, and the risk is relatively low, I'll take the risk.
Right.
But Jane wouldn't take a risk, period. She wouldn't, regardless of the analytics. It was necessary for my entrepreneurship and my attitude to be mellowed by Jane. On the other hand, Jane never found a rut that she wouldn't get in. She loves structure. She loves predictability. She goes to a restaurant. I can tell you what she's going to order.
The waiters might be able to too.
Oh, they do. With me, I ask what the special is of the day, and I usually take it. I love variety. Uh-huh. I love unpredictability. Mm-hmm. Jane loves making order out of chaos. I kind of create it. So it really does. I guess from a business standpoint, it becomes a partnership, but it's really much more than a partnership. You become one. people refer to Jane and Jim. You know, like that's it. Now we have different functions and we have different personalities, but I think that it's really important to understand that the Lord has brought this person into your life for a purpose. And I'll guarantee you, if both of you are focused on the Lord and focused on doing His will, it will become a really effective partnership. I wouldn't. I couldn't have done it without her, and I still don't fully understand why she's still with me, but very grateful.
It's awesome.
50 years. Wow.
Brock, hit us with something profound, and then take us to this. I've been waiting for this end you're going to do since the start. I can't wait.
You just finish it at the end with the...
No, don't deflect now.
No, I know. I was just saying. No,
he wants me to ask the normal end before he does the fun one.
I'll do it. I'm going to do it first, and then you can do it.
Oh, you want to do the fun one first?
Yeah, I'm going to go through mine real quick.
Oh, he's got a fun... We got a little fun...
No, but
change of pace
I will say...
Good.
You know, in light of the Entrusted and the podcast, Jim... You know,
I interrupt real quick just because.
Good gracious, I can't say anything.
No, I got
Ben loves to interrupt. He's like,
I just want to thank you for your time and for your message and all this. Like this, when we sat down and talked about this, every episode has been, but to a T, this is exactly what we wanted to hear and talk about. I mean, so just
good.
And so I really thank you for that. And I mean, we could get rid of our intro episode and just make this our intro. This is what we're here for, is to just hear people share about what the Lord has given them and how they have stewarded that rather than owning it. And so I just want to thank you for that, because this was our vision the whole time.
Yeah, that's right.
So,
well, no, I was just going back to college, and I don't know when you stopped teaching, but I never got to have your class, which was unfortunate. I had heard about you through Dr. A, but I never knew that you sold two publicly traded companies. I mean, and so I'd always had heard about Jim Corman, but I never got a chance to. And Jim didn't really get to talk about this much, but he has played a profound impact on a ton of entrepreneurs that have started out of Auburn and out of, is it called it's Tire Cage, but what's the incubator? It's the incubator in Auburn. Entrepreneur Incubator, and they basically set aside funds and office to allow, you might can go in a little more detail, but entrepreneurs to start their business on campus with potential support from the university as well as outside things. But I had just heard a ton about you just through people that I had talked to, and that's pretty special, just from running two companies and then hearing about you doing that. So.
Well, part of my motivation for teaching was, I mean, Brock, whatever success any of us ever realize in life, and if it's an entrepreneur, there are people that came along, like my father, who trained me, teachers that gave me the background. My grandparents who inspired me, investors who entrusted their money to me, employees who entrusted their professional careers to me. If you realize success and you look back at that path that got you to that successful point, regardless of whether it's business or whatever, you didn't get there on your own. There were so many people that played such an important part of that. And for me, teaching was my opportunity to return some of that grace that I received early on and teaching and hopefully instruction and maybe inspiration, it gives me the opportunity to repay some of that grace that I so wonderfully received early in my career.
All right. So here's your chance.
All right.
This is the fun segment, real quick, before we wrap it up.
Real quick. We'll be quick.
No.
It doesn't take that long. Hold up. I got to get to my camera. Here we go. All right. So, Jim, we're gonna do a simple entrepreneurial class on starting a business. I'm going to ask.
This is totally selfish because Brock is like the most entrepreneurial-minded guy.
Stuff, but all right. I asked an AI chat to give us the top 25 questions that new business owners ask.
All right.
That are important. So I'm going to ask them to you, and it's just typically like one word would be the answer. So I'll ask you one or two. The first one is
rapid fire.
I know. Bootstrap or raise capital?
Bootstrap.
Organic growth or paid acquisition?
Organic growth.
Referrals, are talking specifically about your first customers, referrals or ads?
Referrals.
Hire early or solo grind?
Ooh, what?
Well, so hire early or
do it by yourself for a
do it
while.
by yourself. The solo grind is what they call it. Like do it with no employees in the beginning.
No, hire early.
Hire early. Okay. Be a specialist or a generalist?
Generalist.
Okay. Marketing or sales?
Sales.
I love every one of these answers.
Cash flow or aggressive growth?
Cash flow. Early on.
Early on. Okay. Data or gut?
Ooh.
When you're making a decision, I assume is what it's asking.
Data.
Okay. Delegate or stay in control? It's hard.
I should say delegate, but I do prefer it.
So there you go.
Honesty.
All right, this will be good for you. Short-term profit or long-term vision?
Long-term vision.
Long-term vision. Okay. Debt or no debt?
Debt.
Okay. Speaking, I guess maybe in what you sell, high price ticket or high volume?
High price ticket.
Okay. M&A or pure organic scaling?
Pure organic.
Okay. Reinvest early with everything or take dividends?
No, reinvest early.
Okay. Fixed cost or variable cost? Which one do you focus on more? Hard one. Both important.
Fixed cost is so risky, but it's so rewarding. If I find the right fixed cost model, I'll go for it.
There you go. All right. Getting a mentor or self-teaching or self-taught?
A mentor.
All right. Strict daily routine or a flexible routine?
Flexible.
Okay. Unlearn old habits or double down on new habits? I don't know why they're asking that, but that's what they said.
Double down on new.
Okay. B2B or B2C, folks?
B2B.
B2B. Okay, that was quick. Systems and processes or pure execution?
Pure execution.
All right. Industry disruption or steady optimization? I don't really know where they're going with that one, but
Yeah. For most people, optimization. It's hard to find something that's disruptive.
okay. And this is the last one that I think will be the most important to you and I think most interesting for everybody else. Build to sell or build to own forever?
In today's world, build to sell. Technology is changing too fast. Consumer preferences change so fast. The lifespan of a successful business is not going to be a lifetime.
Okay. All right. Well, there was Jim Corman's class.
I'm going to take this. I'm going to take this part of the
The
podcast.
class I never got.
I'm going to write down every one of those because I loved all of them.
I knew we didn't want to tell you we were doing that. We talked about it on the phone earlier.
That was
I
so
knew you would love
good.
that.
Oh my goodness.
Well, you don't know
We'll
how
do your
much
shit
I
there.
wanted to give an explanation of the answer.
You did.
You had great restraint.
I was really impressed. Yeah.
That was awesome.
You said one or two words.
You did it.
Yeah, you did it.
That was great. I hate to not end on that, but just to tie it back into our message, and this is how we typically close. And you led towards this a little bit earlier, but all the different things that the Lord has entrusted you with over your lifetime, all the different opportunities He's given you, and even when you talked about when you felt like even those opportunities became less significant by worldly standards, but that was even significant. When you think about all that He's done in your life, where you are today, what do you feel like He's entrusted you with?
I think that there are any number of talents or gifts that He's entrusted to me, a lot that He hadn't, but I do have the ability to create a vision and make it real, and the ability to motivate people to achieve that goal. I think that's probably the one gift that stands out the most that He's entrusted me with.
That's awesome. It's really cool, especially with grandchildren, to be able to put that in some of them too. That's cool.
Oh yeah, my maternal grandmother and grandfather had absolutely profound impact on my life. I now have 9 grandchildren, and my sincere prayer is, Lord, let me influence those grandchildren the way that Mama and Papa influenced me.
Amen.
It's good.
Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Jim.
Thank you,
Thank
Jim.
you, guys. This is great.
Awesome.
That was really fun.
So,
Awesome.
perfect.
Hey guys, this is Blaine, one of the hosts here at Entrusted. We are really grateful you chose to spend some time with us today. We know you have lots of options, and we hope that the thoughts and the messages from this talk we had with our guests really propelled you to explore the design that you were created for. The best ways to support us, check out our socials, like, subscribe, leave a review, tell your friends, family, coworkers, neighbors. We hope you enjoyed this episode, and we hope you'll tune back in next time.